Good morning, everybody. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are connecting from in the world. I know we have people from all over the place. We'll play a little bit with this thing here so that we got a little bit of a banner and a branding in the LinkedIn Live. So everybody, thank you so much for connecting today. I know Friday we're doing this. You can do it coffee series to talk about very specific skills for a lot of people right now that are looking for a job. It's a very difficult time for everybody right now.
Mhm.
Just here in the United States, 40 plus million people have lost their jobs in an extremely short period of time, just 10, 12 weeks. And this is the same reality in many other countries. I have been speaking with many HR leaders and friends from a number of countries. Just this morning, I was speaking with a friend in Panama, and he was telling me how the country basically came to a halt because of all that's happening with the coronavirus. So, first thing is, I want to let you know that we're going to be here for you, providing any support, any help that we can do to you. But at the same time, please continue to stay safe, strong, healthy. We're going to get out of this. And more importantly, know that you're not alone, and
Mhm.
we're going to have a fantastic conversation today about resumes and LinkedIn and whatnot. But please know that you are not alone. A lot of people are going through a similar experience, or they have been in a similar place than the place where you are today. So if by any chance you need to reach out to others, to talk, to bounce off some ideas, please know that there are many people out there willing to help, to lend them to lend you their hand. And that's what one of the most beautiful things that we're seeing out of this tragedy
Mhm.
community that we are building. Anyway, please let us know where in the world you are connecting from. It's going to be awesome to know where you are. If you have any questions for us during the chat, please feel free to post it on the LinkedIn Live. I know some people are on Facebook, YouTube. Please post the questions, and we're going to try to see them all. Kyle, how's it going? How are you?
It is good. It is going great here. I'm coming from the Bay Area and it has been super warm and sunny. As you can see, I'm bright. So I am loving it. Things have been going well here. All things considered, going through a global pandemic, things are going really well here. I'm really thankful. A lot of my clients, despite the current unemployment situation, are still getting jobs. They're still getting interviews. So I'm very thankful of that. And I think that's an important myth I just want to dispel right away. And I've been telling everyone that despite what's going on right now, despite all the unemployment numbers, people are still getting jobs. They're still
Yeah.
getting interviews. I even have people getting raises or promotions right now. So I think that's really important. I just want to put that out there right away too. And that makes me happy. So that's how
Yeah.
I'm doing. I'm doing well with all things considered.
I'm glad to hear that you're doing well and that you're sending that message out, actually, because uh, one thing that I'm also seeing is how people that have lost their jobs, they know that there are companies that are hiring, and
Mhm.
they are investing a lot of time and energy into building their personal and professional brand, which was, by the way, the first topic of the conversation of the coffee series a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago. Then last week we talked about how to network as introverts, and how to improve LinkedIn. And now we're talking about resumes. So all very specific skills geared and designed for those that know that there are jobs out there, but they have to improve the way they are, perhaps presenting themselves for those opportunities. So, very relevant conversation today about resumes. So let me start by saying the following. I coined this session the perfect resume, which I know you will be like, that doesn't exist. That's
Uh-huh.
you know. So I want to divide this conversation in three parts.
Okay.
Number one, the first part, for those who are getting into the job market for the first time and they don't have that much in their resume. So what should they be doing? So that's number one. Number two, for those that maybe they have their resume but they haven't been looking for a job for a long time, and they need to make some tweaks here and there to make it better, right? And the third part of the conversation, I would love to focus on those that have been working in the same place or in the same role for a long time, especially more senior people, and how they can sort of customize and work in the resumes now that they are probably in the job market again. So that's Does that sound okay to
I
divide it up?
love that. Yeah,
Awesome.
because all three of those groups are people I work with, and all three of those
Yeah.
groups struggle on how do they brand themselves, how do they write resumes, how do they tell their story. So I love that. Those are three perfect conversations
Oh,
for us to have.
fantastic. So let's kick off with the first group, those that are just building their resume for the first time. So, what does the perfect resume look like for that group of people?
Yeah. So I worked on college campuses for 5 years. 4 of those years were with undergraduate students, and a year was with master level, doctoral, postdoc students. And a lot of these students had some experience working on college, but a lot of these students had no formal work experience. And they would come to me and say, Kyle, I have nothing to put on my resume. People say, keep it to a page. That's easy for me. I can keep it to a few sentences because I have no experience. Well, once I started digging into their experiences, learning their stories, we realized they had a lot of stuff to pull from. And oftentimes it just wasn't formal work experience. I recently did a project for an organization where I wrote resumes for a few dozen of their scholarship students, and they hired me to write all their resumes as they were graduating. And I found that these students had so much experience once I started digging. So if you are someone who doesn't feel like you have a lot of experience, look beyond just formal work experience. Have you done internships? Have you volunteered? Look at just your typical day. How do you spend your day? And what are the transferable skills? One student, they were an Airbnb host for their parents, and we put that on their resume. Someone else helped manage a social media account for someone. So go through your experience, see how you spend your day, and then once you have all that experience written down, go look at job postings and say, okay, how can I connect the dots here between what I've done and what these job postings are asking for? And you may not have done exactly what they're looking for, but you've probably done something that's similar. And I found that to just work wonders.
That is fantastic for that first group of people. And I'm going to ask you one question that is very related to this first group of people, but it also applies for everybody else. A lot of people ask, tell me, well, I'm looking for a job in HR and I do podcasting, but that doesn't have anything to do with my job. And I tell them, well, you know what? It is actually the opposite, because very often people in companies are looking for somebody with those skills. So what's your take on people adding in their resumes experiences that seemingly don't have anything to do with the job that they're looking for, yet they tell you something about that person that may not be included in the rest of the experience? What's your take on that?
I have found that I can always find something related. I did this activity during a workshop. I was live, I was being videotaped, I was on a stage, there was 150 people. And I said, I feel like we were doing a project manager resume. And I said, I feel like everyone here has been a project manager in one form or another. And then someone said, I work at a morgue and I deal with dead bodies. I can't make this up. And I said, okay, let's talk about project management, how you do that. And they're like, it's not a project. I said, well, you have a body come in and then you deal with that. And then you walk them through the different stages of dealing with that body. And I was like, this is grim. I was not expecting this when I'm doing a keynote. But we walked through and they realized that dealing with that body was project management. That was a project they dealt with, and they walk it through the various stages of a project, from planning to implementation to executing that body and preparing it for the family. And it's amazing how many transferable skills we can find in any job. So what I would do is take the job posting of the position you're targeting and literally copy and paste it into your resume and then massage it till it fits. So if it says you need experience sourcing people, for a podcast, you probably source people. You need experience interviewing candidates. On a podcast, you've interviewed people, and then just start going through. So I found when people take the job posting and then start massaging it to fit their experience, they realize, oh my gosh, I've actually done 90% of this. Because at the end of the day, most jobs are similar to each other, and then it's just the technical aspects that are a bit different.
Yeah, I love that. And, that's why I think, part of the message that you're also sending to the people here and to our audience is that they need to work in customizing the resumes for the job that they are applying to. One of the main mistakes that I, of course, now, looking back, now I know that I made when I was looking for a job was to use the same resume and, like one of those spam emails that you send, like blasting everybody. I'm like, let me blast my resume to everybody to see, who catches it, right? And that doesn't work that way, because, the one set of skills or the way I communicated one set of skills for one specific area may not be as relevant for another area. And I may have had the skills needed in this other area. It's just that I wasn't communicating them well. So I think that's super powerful. Let me move on. We got a few questions in there. We're going to be addressing
Yeah.
them, but I want to quickly touch on the three groups of people and then go back to some of the questions. So for those who are, for those that don't have that much experience, what you're saying is, look into your whatever you've done and try to bring it up to your resume in a way that conveys part of the skills that are needed for, whatever job that you're looking for. The second group of people, those that have some level of experience and, they may be mid-career and, they need to perhaps, maybe improve their resumes, right? I mean, all the recommendations for the first group apply to them as well.
Yep.
But what should they do differently, right? If I am, I've been working for 20 years, maybe I'm looking for a job. I have my resume and I think it's good, but it may not be. So what should I be looking into my resume to make it better?
Yeah, so for these mid-career folks, similar to the students, I love the customization and really targeting. You don't have to customize it or spend tons of time customizing it for each company, but you want to customize it for kind of the job function. So if you're targeting HR recruiting roles and then you go and target, let's say, employee relations roles, you shouldn't have the same resume. Those are two different job functions. And then once you get into your mid-career, there's a lot of competition when you're in middle management. There's a ton of competition. So the key is to figure out what sets you apart from all these other people, especially if you're targeting competitive companies or competitive industries. There's going to be 250, 1,000, sometimes 10,000 applicants. I've talked to recruiters and they're getting thousands and thousands of applicants. They'll post a role, the next day they wake up and there's 1,000 applicants. So you have to figure out what sets you apart from all these other people. And I ask that question when I craft resumes. We have 1,000 applicants. What sets you apart from everyone else? And people say, I don't know, Kyle. And I say, well, it's good we're working on that now instead of during the interview. So that's key. And if you're not sure what sets you apart and you're watching this right now, I encourage you to message a few people and ask what makes me fabulous. And I give this homework all the time to my clients. And don't say, okay, we're watching this show right now and I got this assignment. No, just text a few colleagues or friends or family members and say, what makes me fabulous? And look at the feedback. And that can be some initial insight.
I absolutely love that. Oh, please, Kyle, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I was just going to say, and it's a big boost. You can set it as your background screen on your phone and stuff. I would do it right now, but I literally just did it a few days ago. And I feel like all my friends and stuff are getting annoyed with it because I do it so often. But the second piece too, you can then dive deeper and say, hey, you've worked with a lot of fellow HR business partners. What sets me apart from other fellow HR business partners? So if you have a difficult time finding it internally, have other people do the work for you and ask them what sets you apart. Or go to your boss and say, hey, you got a bunch of applicants, you chose me, what was it? Or go to your performance evaluation and find that. And when I write resumes, I actually ask people for their performance evaluations. And sometimes I pull them out and put it on their resume at the top and say, Kyle is the best HR business partner I've hired in 20 years, CHRO of Facebook or whatever it may be, and put that right on the resume. So then there's that proof right there.
That is so powerful. And actually, to be honest, this goes way beyond just resumes. This is building your personal brand. And somebody has a question about personal brand. We're going to be addressing some of that question later. But it's just building your personal brand because, one thing that you're doing, and I know some people don't like this, but this is the reality. When if you have a company that you want to work for and there's one role and you want to get to that role, there are 10,000 other people that want to get to that role too. So like you're saying, Kyle, you're going to have to differentiate yourself from the crowd. You're going to have to stand out. And that means, following some of these recommendations and doing whatever is possible, for you to be able to stand out from that crowd. Let me ask you one question that I know is going to be sort of related to all the groups. And then we're going to be targeting the third group. One thing that I normally recommend people, and I would love to know your take on this, is sometimes you see a job description and the job description is very cold, right? It doesn't really tell you what the job is, what they're looking for and whatnot. So what I tell people is, try to find the ways to get to the hiring manager or to the people that are involved in the interviews and whatnot, and ask them more information about that job, because then you can customize your resume for the invisible kind of thing, the one that is not told in the job description, but could also set you apart because you have more information. What's your take on that kind of like intel work, if you will?
I love that. For my clients, some of the homework I assign them is for every one job they apply to, they have to reach out to 5 people. So they're spending, it calculates to like 83%. So they're spending 85% of their time networking. And that's one of my assignments. And I encourage them to reach out to people, just like you're saying, people who are similar to the job they're targeting. So if they want to be a HR business partner, they have to reach out to 5 HR business partners at that company or similar people in that role so they can get that information. What's the culture like? What's this company like? What's your day-to-day look like? Why did you join this company? What was the application process like? And really just gain that inside information so they can leverage that in their application. And then sometimes they get an internal referral link or they get an introduction to the hiring manager. But what happens is people spend tons of time on their resume because that's easy to blame. It's easy to work on. And it takes a little more guts and confidence to network in the fear of rejection. But then what happens is my clients say, oh my gosh, Kyle, I actually didn't get rejected. I reached out to this person. They responded and I have an informational interview and they get really excited. So I encourage you to reach out to some of those people because especially right now during COVID, more and more people are willing to help each other.
Yeah, I really, really love that recommendation. And, you said something that, kind of like, made me think about some of the things that I've been telling some of my, my friends and colleagues before. And, if there are 10 things that you can do and you only do 5, and then you don't get that job, I mean, it becomes easy to blame the company. Oh, they didn't hire me and whatnot. But the reality is that you still have 5 more things that you could have done to get that job and you didn't do them. One of them being networking. So if you're only focusing on your resume, knowing that one of the other things that you can do is networking and you're not doing it, then you are not really standing out from those that are building a great resume plus doing the network, work. And I think it's something like 80 to 90% of all jobs here in America, are landed via networking. So you're missing 90% of the chances to actually get that job. You also said something really, really interesting, which we've had as part of our conversations, which is sometimes people want to switch careers and they don't really know what the other career looks like or the skills and whatnot. And one thing that we've been telling them is, look at the people that are already in that career, look what they've done, their skills, what they've learned, the schools they've gone to, the people that they have spoken with. And that's going to give you an idea of your possible path, right? So anything to add in that sense, like, building sort of your own capabilities based on what you see in the market from other people?
That's some of the most valuable advice I can give. What you just said is finding people who are already where you want to be. And not that you need to copy them or take the same path, but learning how they got there. What were the challenges? Is there anything they would avoid? That's what I like doing. I'm a resume writer. I'm a career coach. So I find people who are a few years ahead of me and say, hey, how did you get to where you are? Is there anything you would change? And let them mentor me if they're open to it. That is so, so valuable. And sometimes people would say, you know what, you don't want this path, or here's what I would do differently. So there is nothing better for your career than finding people who are where you want to be and learning from them. I know for the longest time I wanted to run a hospital, and then I finally talked to some COOs at hospitals, and I learned their entire days are meetings and budgets, 2 things I don't like. And then I said, oh, if I would have talked to you 5 years ago, I wouldn't have went to get a master's in healthcare administration. I could have switched that, which I ended up doing once I talked to all of them. And for 5 years, I could have been planning for a different career.
Yeah, that's powerful. And by the way, everybody, once again, Kyle, thank you for being here. We have a lot of other questions, and then I want to get to the third group. I want to make sure that I acknowledge the participation of from people from literally all over the world. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't told us where you are connecting from today, please let us know, because part of the building, the reason why I do this on LinkedIn Live actually is because it's so easy to network with other people. You just have to click on their name and the system takes you to their profile. And if you see something interesting there, you can just connect with them or send them a message. So make sure that you are letting us know where in the world you are connecting from. We're having a convo here with Kyle Elliott, an expert in career, resumes, LinkedIn. You have his website in the screen, so please feel free to reach out to him after this conversation. Kyle, I want to move on to, before addressing the many questions that we have in the chat, I want to move on to the third group of people. We covered the more junior, mid-career folks, and now we want to move on to the more senior people, which we've seen that in crisis very often they tend to get either their salaries are cut and they want to go for another job, or they get laid off and whatnot. So what's your recommendation for that group of senior people that are also trying to improve their resumes and whatnot? So what's your recommendation for them?
Yeah, so executive senior managers are my zone of genius, especially Silicon Valley high tech. That's most of my clients. And when they come to me, they're typically stuck. They have not looked for a job for 5, 10, sometimes 20 years. Some of them have never written a resume because they get recruited for job after job. And they're sometimes reluctant to invest in a professional because they're scared. They say, oh my gosh, Kyle, I should know how to write a resume. I write memos, I go and present to our shareholders, I can manage a multi-billion-dollar budget. Why can I not write a resume that gets picked up by recruiters? And it's okay to ask for help, and I think that's challenging, but to recognize that they ask for help in all these different ways. They have teams of thousands that they lead, and to recognize that it's okay to ask for help and that it might take a little money, but how much time you're saving and if you invest in someone. And then the other piece I encourage for executives, which they're afraid of, is to be a little creative on your resume. This doesn't mean you have to have super bold colors or graphics, but what they say when I ask them, the very first question I ask executives and anyone when I write their resume is, tell me some adjectives that describe you. And they'll say creative, innovative, dynamic. And then when we write their resume, they say, I want it black and white Times New Roman. And I say, well, that you say you're creative, innovative, dynamic, but then you don't want your brand to reflect that. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to take some risks in your job search. One of my favorite rules is from my dad. And this rule is break the rules, but don't be an a-hole. So I like using this during the job search. It's okay to break some rules, to be a little different, to share a testimonial on your resume, to share some of your performance review. Go over a page. If you're an executive with a one-page resume, that usually doesn't work. So it's okay to break some rules, but don't just do it to break a rule. Be strategic and intentional.
I love that. Breaking the rules, but doing so in a way that takes you somewhere, not just for the fact of saying like, oh, I broke the rules. You broke the rule, but then you got a job.
Exactly.
So it's not just you broke the rule, but I didn't get the job. So I love that idea of breaking the rules, but also being strategic and intentional about the design of your resume and even your networking. Making sure that whatever in your limited amount of time, you are networking with the people you want to network with, and you're reaching out in the right way and whatnot. I'm sure that you get several of these messages like I do, people sending me a one-liner saying, I need a job or help me find a job. And, what I think is like I would love to, but, that's not the way you approach somebody that you don't know, right? You gotta, I work it out in a different way. So you gotta be more strategic, more intentional about even the way you message people, for networking. So we got a lot of questions here, Kyle, and I want to start bringing some of them to our conversation. One of them is, what's your recommendation for people who have employment gaps in their resumes? Some years of sabbatical or whatever it is. So what's your recommendation for that group of people?
You want to address gaps on your resume because that's the first thing that recruiters and hiring managers are going to look for. So you can address it really quickly, concisely, clearly. So for example, one of my clients, I was in Europe for a year, traveled to 12 countries, tried volcano jumping, whatever it may be, really concisely, or laid off due to COVID along with 30% of the workforce. Done. Really concisely, directly to the point. I was doing a workshop yesterday with Jill Katz, actually, and we were talking about the job search. And what she likes doing is finding those gaps on the resume and then diving in there, and less about the gap and ensuring that you're ready to speak about uncomfortable situations. So be ready to talk about those, because she wants to see how are you going to show up in the workforce and talk about difficult conversations. So I would just encourage you, address them up front and be ready to talk about them, but you don't need to go in detail. Or let's say there was an illness in your family. You could say, I took care of a one-time illness that's no longer a concern. Done.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I have a good friend of mine, many, many years ago, she was in a managerial position in a company, and she decided to send everything to, hell, basically. And, she told me, I quit my job. I sold everything that I had, and I went on a 1-year sabbatical traveling around the world. When I came back, of course she came, she was transformed into a multicultural leader now who knew about all these countries and cultures. Her previous company hired her back in a more senior position than she had before, because for them, they knew how valuable she was, but now she had this added, even more added value by knowing all these cultures that the company was working for. And she had, like you said, she addressed the gap, saying, I was doing this and this and that during this 1 year. So great advice. Any tips for military veterans or those retiring from the military in the job search right now?
Yeah, so we have an Air Force base near us. So I work with a good amount of people who are military veterans, and I love mentioning it. People love hiring veterans. So I put it in their LinkedIn headline. I put it at the top of their resume. So make sure to mention it. But you also want to ensure you speak the language of civilians who don't know what it means to defend, I don't know, $5 billion worth of property. I don't know what that means. I'm not, my brother was in the Air Force, but I don't know what that means. So you have to speak the language of people who are not familiar with military lingo. So similar to really early career job seekers and anyone, I would pull language from the job posting, put it on your resume, and then massage it. What happens is people write their resume and then try and apply for jobs. But instead, you want to take the job posting language and then rewrite it to fit your career. So for a lot of these people with military experience, I tell them just scrap their old resume and start over. It's going to be a lot quicker instead of trying to use this lingo that no one outside of the military often knows what it means. I'll get these resumes. I was like, I need you to explain every word on here. Let's just start over. Walk me through your career and I'm going to rewrite this.
That's exactly what you've been saying through the entire conversation, which is, customize your resume for the job that you're looking for and the job that is posted and you want to get. Another question here. I think you addressed a little bit about this, but I just want to make sure that everybody who's connecting now, has clarity around this question. Yeah. This person is asking, I was furloughed due to COVID-19. Do I need to indicate that on my resume, or do I just keep my current job listed as is until I'm either called back or let go if they don't bring us back? Kind of a heavy question there.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I would leave it if you're still technically with the company. I would leave it on there. Unless you've only been there a short period of time, then people may ask. So it could depend on your situation. It might be helpful to put on there then you were temporarily furloughed, and that's why you're looking for a job. And then mention the percent of the workforce. I think that's important so people don't, because sometimes people will say they're laid off when they're really fired, or people use the word furloughed when they're really fired. So it's important to say what percentage of the workforce or how many other people. So there's 5,000 of us furloughed, or 500 out of 10,000 person workforce. So people have an idea of it and they have some context around it. So it really depends on your unique situation. But sometimes you might be able to say you're just still there. Other times you may want to put an asterisk and say I was furloughed along with this number of other people or this percentage of the workforce.
That's a great advice, and that helps. If I'm a recruiter and I see that, then I know it's not just you for whatever reason. It is you together with 25% of the workforce, and we know why, right? And I think that's fantastic. I think this is the quintessential question in resumes. What do you do in your resume to catch the eye of the recruiter? Like, I think recruiters spend something like 5 seconds just looking at resumes and they move to the next one. So what is the one thing, if there was one thing that you could do to, make it shiny, if you will, without making it shiny?
Yeah. I would say the top of the resume. So I have a piece of paper here. Let me grab a piece of paper. I'm glad we're on video. So this is your resume, right? And most of the times it's going to be digital, but I would fold your resume in thirds. I'm going to show you. I'm so glad we're doing this visually. And the top third of your resume should be so powerful that they want to hire you based on that alone. And what happens is people write this really boring summary that they copy and pasted somewhere. Instead, you want to tell me in a few sentences why I should hire you. Some bullet points or some amazing accomplishments. Here's the money I saved the company. Here's my years of experience. Here's my degree, if the company requires a degree. But put something at the top that says, here in 5 seconds why you should hire me. And I think that's really key piece that people forget about. They just put a boring summary and then save all the goods for later on the resume.
That's fantastic. And then connecting that with what you said before about being creative and intentionally and strategically creative and breaking some rules. If you are going to work for an organization that is very innovative and rewards people for breaking stuff, then you may want to say, I broke a couple of things in the past and this is the result of that one thing, right? Because then that is, you speak the language of that company, versus if you're looking for a job in a more tie suit kind of company where you may want to be a little bit more careful about how you convey the idea of breaking stuff at work.
Exactly. And people, we've talked about customizing resumes, and I have this little timer. It's a minute, second, like start stop timer. It's just a basic timer. The only place I could find it was the Dollar Tree. And we keep talking about customizing resumes. I suggest customizing your resume for 20, 30 minutes max for each job, and using just the top of that third of the resume and only customizing that for each job. So you're not spending 4 or 8 hours. Or I've heard a client say, oh, I spent 3 weeks customizing my resume for this job. Instead, spend 20, 30 minutes customizing that top third. If they say, we need someone with 10 years of HR experience, have a bullet at the top that says 10 years of HR experience. If they say, we need someone who has an MBA, say, I have an MBA at the top of that resume. We need someone who's worked in the US and Europe. I've worked in the US and Europe. If you need someone who's bilingual, say, I'm bilingual up there. So put all of that in that top third and make it really easy for the recruiter to put you in the yes pile.
That is a fantastic advice. It seems so much common sense, and then we miss the common sense, right? Another question. I know this is one that is very relevant for me because I've been in different kind of like careers and whatnot. What's your advice for those people that seemingly have jumped from industry to industry, or they have been in different careers? How do you convey that there's a meaning or something that makes sense in that resume, if you will?
You need to start with the job posting and work backwards. So for example, I have working at Denny's on my LinkedIn because I'm able to tie it into being a coach now. So I was a server there when I was in high school, and I came back during college summers. And I tied in because I was the newest server there, but I was really good at policies and procedures and teaching people. So every time a new server came in, they would shadow me for a week or two, and I would coach the new servers and say, okay, here's how you serve, here's how you greet people, here's how you upsell. And then I started becoming the go-to server to train people, and I was training new people. And now I coach people for a living. I educate for a living. I'm getting my doctorate in adult education. So you have to tie it in to whatever you're doing moving forward. Even though the coaching was only a small portion of my job, that's what matters. So I don't talk about the serving. I don't talk about making milkshakes. I don't talk about heating up apple pie. I talk about what's relevant to what I do now. So you always want to start with that job and work backwards, not write your resume and then say, okay, let me try and shove it into this job you're looking for. You want to work backwards from the job posting and only put what's relevant.
Love it. And Kyle, I want to ask you, do you have a couple of extra minutes to address a couple of
questions? Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Because I want to be mindful about the fact that I ask you only until 8:30
Yeah, no, I have
time. Awesome. Well, thank you, because many more questions are coming up. So once again, everybody, thank you for being here. This is Kyle Elliott, expert, as you can see, resume writing, LinkedIn, career coach, the website. You can reach out to him via the website that is on the screen. If not, well, Kyle is incredibly responsive on LinkedIn as well. So if in case you want to reach out to him. There are a couple of questions in here. One of them is, how far back do you go in your professional history? For somebody who has 20 years of work and the first experience was in, like myself, 1997 or something like that. Yeah. Do I put that in my resume, 1997, that I was a mailman for a company, or do I forget about that and focus more on the recent experience?
I feel like a broken record when I'm going to answer this, but look at the job posting. So if they say we're looking for 5 years of experience and you go to 97 and put 23, you're not going to be aligning with what they're wanting.
Yeah.
But if they say we want 20 years of experience and then you put to 97, which is 23, that's okay. The second is making sure you're connecting the dots. So if they say we want 23 years of customer service experience, being a mailman is customer service, and then you're connecting the dots for them. But if they say we want someone who's been a coder for 20 plus years and you put mailman, I can connect the dots, but I'm not sure where I can get the coding out of being a mailman. So we really have to make sure it's relevant and just work from the job posting. I have files for each of my clients on my backpack, and I literally print out the job posting for each client. I get a highlighter, and each time I add it to their resume, I highlight it. And that's how I would write your resume. Highlight every item as you add it to your resume. And don't just say, oh, I know I have this experience, it's on my resume. No, highlight it on the job posting, then highlight it on your resume and make sure they correlate. Because if they're not directly saying the same thing or very similar wording, the recruiter is not going to see it during that 6 second, 8 second glance.
Awesome. got many additional specific questions in here.
Yeah.
One of them is, and I may want to say a couple of things about this one, is about the electronic technology job portals, right? That you upload your resume and then somebody sees it, right? One thing that I didn't know, but I found out because I built a platform for this, and this was like about 5 years ago. Many of these companies, when you upload your resume, they can, if it's technology based, they cannot read a PDF, or they cannot read a colorful thing with a lot of images kind of resume. So you may want to find out what that company is using for a technology. Go to the technology to see how they read the resumes, because if they can only read a Microsoft Word resume, you may want to upload your resume in Word, because if you upload it in PDF, no matter how good it is, the system won't be able to read it. So any additional thoughts on this area, Kyle?
I love your point on really focusing on what that company is using, because every company is different. Most of my clients are Silicon Valley high tech. So those companies like Facebook, Google and stuff, they're able to read a PDF. Google, for example, there's humans, at least every recruiter I've talked to, there's a human reading every single resume. So they use applicant tracking system to manage the overall process of receiving resumes, but then they have a human that reads every resume. So it's so key to know what that individual company is doing and how they're vetting it, because it's so different. There's so many different applicant tracking systems. I've read through the Taleo manual because it's so dense, and how it looks is different, and then there's constant updates. And that's why I think it's key, if you have the money to invest in a resume writer, because we have Facebook groups and we're looking, okay, there's a new update to Taleo. Here's what it looks like now, and here's what your PDF looks like. Or my mom works in HR, so she showed me the backside of Taleo and says, when you send a resume in, Kyle, here's what it looks like. Here's where it populates. So I love that focus on really looking on the back end too and understanding that. And don't be afraid to ask your resume writer about that experience and those questions, and not just writing a resume that looks pretty.
Awesome. Got a question here about the infamous cover letter. What do you got to say about that cover letter? What's the deal with the cover letter these days?
This is super contested. I did a job search workshop yesterday, virtual, and Jill Katz shared something that I really like. She mentioned a cover note. So instead of doing a cover letter in the email, if you're able to use a cover note, she said, I think 6 sentences is like a good sweet spot in saying, here's why I'm sending you this note. Here's what's helpful. When I do cover letters, I include it in the same document as the resume if possible. And on the first page, say, here, the normal format I use is, here's 3 things that set me apart from other applicants, so that when the recruiter gets a resume, they have a clear idea of, okay, I have 1,000 people. Here's what makes this person different from the other 1,000 people. And that's the format I use. It's super quick, to the point, a few hundred words. You don't have to do a cover letter for most jobs, but I find it's a missed opportunity to brand yourself and set yourself apart. But I would advise against a novel unless you're in very specific industries where lengthy cover letters are normal, like maybe higher education where I used to work. But if you talk to 100 HR people or 100 recruiters, you're going to get 100 different answers around cover letters.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, I think it's important to know some of those tips, because, especially for those that are looking for jobs in companies that are still, requiring a cover letter. We're going to be doing maybe a couple of additional questions. One of them is, what do you do when you've been in the same organization for a long period of time, 15, 20 years, and then you want to change, right? I mean, whether in your resume or if you get to an interview process, they will probably ask you, I mean, you've been in this company for the past 15, 20 years. So what's your recommendation, both for the resume and maybe even for the interview as well?
So the key reason people ask about being at a company for a long time is they're worried about stagnation. They're worried about lack of innovation. So the key is to show how you've grown over time. I've had clients who have been at companies for 25 plus years. Some of those people have gone promotions. I've had people be in the same role for over 20 years at a company, and either way is okay. The key is to show how you've innovated and grown, and show projects and say, here's how I've changed over the years. Here's how I've adapted to change, whether it's trainings, whether it's taking on new projects, whether it's taking on new responsibilities. Show that on your resume and consider splitting it up by year too. So even if you're at the same company, and even if you didn't have new roles, you can split it up by years and say, from this year to this year, I was working on this project or these things. And then these years I took on more responsibility and worked on this. And then these years I worked on this. So even if you're at one company for 20 years, you can still use a chronological like format to show here's what I was doing in these maybe 5-year chunks.
Awesome. And one thing that we haven't talked about, and we may be doing another coffee series for this specific topic, which is the topic of customizing your LinkedIn. A lot of people go straight to LinkedIn. I mean, I always, like, even for the speakers of my events, I always go directly to the LinkedIn profile to see what they got in there, which number one means it is important for you to keep your LinkedIn profile updated. And it's not just because you're looking for a job, but it's part of your professional branding, if you will. But any recommendation to transfer some of these ideas and tips that you have shared with us today onto the LinkedIn profile? Do you transfer them directly? Because if we're talking about customizing a resume for a job, LinkedIn is very static. So how do you transfer that one to the other?
So I'm an imagery person. So the best imagery I give people is a cupcake. So the LinkedIn is the sprinkles and frosting of a cupcake. So it's up here and it's grabbing their attention. And then a recruiter or hiring manager is going by and saying, ooh, look at that yummy cupcake. I like it. But it's light and it grabs their attention. It has a picture on your LinkedIn, but it's not super dense. It's not going all the way in. It's just a little bit. And people say, ooh, I like that. Maybe a few sentences or a short paragraph for each position. And they say, I like it. And then they go to get it. And then you say, ooh, I actually have the cake for you, which is the resume, which is more satiating, which is more dense, which is less colorful, which is going to fill them up. But you don't want to just put your resume on there. You don't want to put everything on there because you want to leave them wanting more. You want them to say, okay, I like the sprinkles and frosting. Give me that cupcake. So then you can send them your resume.
Awesome. Couple of last questions, Kyle. And, once again, I want to thank everybody. Lots of conversations in there. This is Kyle Elliott. You have the website Caffeinated Kyle, which probably tells you that's going to be high energy when you have these conversations. That's for sure. You will be active all the time. So Kyle is a professional resume writer, career coach, LinkedIn professional as well. So please feel free to reach out to him if you got any questions about writing your resume and improving your professional branding on LinkedIn or your resume. A couple of last questions, Kyle. We talked a little bit about this in the past couple of sessions that we had in this coffee series, and it is about building your personal branding, which to me it is fundamental these days if you want to stand out from the crowd. I know that sometimes you cannot convey that necessarily fully into your resume, but you can do so on your social media, especially your LinkedIn profile. So what's your advice for job seekers when it comes to building their professional brand? What should they be focusing on as something, whether it is if they have spoken at an event, putting the video up there, if they have written an article, put the article up there. Any recommendation for job seekers when it comes to showcasing their professional and personal brand?
The biggest mistake I see with personal branding is people blending in, doing the exact same thing that everyone else is doing, sharing the same quotes, sharing the same articles, engaging in the same way. And I would encourage you to take some risks and say, you know what can I do? Going back to my dad's advice, to break the rules but not be an a-hole, and figure out what can set you apart. What have you done in your career that's a little bit different, and share that with everyone else. And don't feel like you have to start from scratch. Sometimes I've had clients literally just share a work project or an update from work and say, here's what I'm working on. It's been really amazing. But don't just blend in with everyone else. That is not going to help your job search. You need to do things that are different. And again, as I shared earlier, and I know we've had some new people join, again, I really encourage you. It's super simple. Text 3 people, say, what makes me fabulous? And even that can be a start. Share the responses from that with people. And it is amazing the responses you'll get, and just sharing that. And you can even post on LinkedIn. Feel free to tag me and ask the question, what makes you fabulous? And just getting those responses is amazing, because I love focusing on what makes each of us different. And it's just truly fabulous for your personal brand to be able to identify and own and share that.
Absolutely. And one thing that I tell people, and English is my second language. So when I moved to the US, and it was 2-3 years before I started writing and doing videos on LinkedIn. And I go back to the first article that I wrote in 2014. It really does not make any sense right now. I read it and I'm like, what the heck was I trying to say back then? But to me, it was not about the article. It was about the fact that I was putting myself out there. I knew that the moment that I wrote that first article, some people were going to like it, some people were going to dislike it, and I was going to be getting a lot of feedback. But to me, it was the act of putting myself out there and starting to build my personal and professional brand, which is what I've done with Hacking HR. And this is a recommendation that, I just want to make sure that people, take it away with them. I think everybody has story, experience, insights to share. I mean, yes, you can share an article from somebody else, but maybe it becomes more important for you to comment on it with your own ideas and your own thinking. Yes, you can, repost a video from somebody else, but maybe you can create the video yourself. And one thing that I want to tell you is you don't have to do this perfectly. You don't have to have a professional camera to do a video. You can just use your phone. I think people right now, they care way less about how professional a video is put together, and they care way more about the message that you're sending. Look at, people who create videos from just walking on the streets. Some of them are fantastic videos, and they're just walking on the street, just sharing a message. So to me, it is the power of utilizing technology and all these different things that you can utilize to build your professional and personal brand. Kyle, I want to ask one last question. I know partially the answer to that question. The question is, what questions should people be asking themselves in this process of improving and creating the perfect resume? I know one of the questions that you asked throughout this conversation is, what makes us fabulous? What other, maybe a couple of other questions that people can ask themselves to build that perfect resume?
Yeah, so I think what makes you fabulous, what sets you apart from all of the other people applying for these roles, and really dig into that. And again, if you don't know, look at performance evaluations, look at what other people have said about you, look at testimonials, text some people, what makes me fabulous. Also, look at what you want in your next role. So an activity I like people doing too is going through and making a list, creating a grid in 4 different quadrants and saying, what do I have to have in my next job? What do I want? What can I have? And what do I not want? And really going through and mapping that out before you start your job search and having that clear, and then printing it out, laminating it. So again, what do I have to have? What do I want? What do I not want? And what can't I have? And making that crystal clear, so then you don't get shiny object syndrome and say, ooh, look, this exciting job, and then it pays way less than you want, or it's working for a company that doesn't align with your values. So really being clear about what you want, and then again, working backwards from that.
Awesome. Great advice. This has been an amazing conversation, lots of tips, and I'm sure that a lot of people will be going back to the video to check it out again, because lots of things were said during this conversation. Thank you so much, Kyle, for sharing so much knowledge, ideas, expertise, insights with with this community. I really appreciate it. And everybody else who's been connected here, please, this is Kyle Elliott. You have the website, his website posted on the screen. Feel free to reach out to him. He's on LinkedIn. That's how we connected in the first place. Yeah. And I think the beauty of all the things that you said, Kyle, is that all of them are doable. Nothing depends on some strange set of circumstances that will make it impossible. All of those things are doable. So thank you so much for sharing all this with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun. And again, don't hesitate to send me a LinkedIn message, head to my website, reach out. I'm here for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everybody. Please stay tuned. We're coming back next week on Friday. Well, we have a lot of things going on every week, but every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, we're going to be bringing this. You can do it. And we call it this way because we believe in you and we know that you can do it. You're going to get the job of your dreams. You're going to get an amazing job, that promotion. So we believe in you. So you can do it coffee series, where we're going to be talking about a lot of very specific skills that are important for you to stay relevant, thriving in this world of work. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everybody.